Hello, everyone. It is my absolute honor today to introduce our keynote speaker, a visionary whose life's work has redefined boundaries of design, research, and innovation. With over 50 years of experience in design, research, and innovation, uh, he has not only pioneered the field of co creation, but he has conducted groundbreaking research in 50 countries with about 12,000 participants and uncovered insights that has shaped future of technology, culture, and human experience. As founder and CEO of SonicRim, a path-breaking design and research firm, he has guided Fortune 5000 companies, startups, and visionaries towards deeper and more meaningful connection with the people that they serve. Beyond the work in design and research, he is a poet, an educator, an author, and a provocateur of ideas. His latest book, Being and Belonging, is a testament to his lifelong commitment to exploring the intersection of life, curiosity, compassion, and imagination. And today, he brings the same spirit to this very stage. Please join me in welcoming a true pioneer, a thought leader, and a storyteller who will not just only talk to us, but challenge us to go beyond conventions, to spark creativity, and to rethink what it means to be a human in this post pandemic AI driven world. Please join me in welcoming Uday Dandvate.
I'm going to sit here. Can you see me till the end? I don't like to be on the platform. I like to be on the ground. I think that's what we are all about. We need to check ground realities, right? And no, this is good. Um, Outside of what he said, which is like more like eologies, I just want to give you a quick background before I start inviting you to participate in a conversation, which may turn a little abstract and ambiguous. Um, so, just to give you a background of what I've done research. I don't want to call it user research. I'll tell you why. I was trained as a designer at NID. You talked about NID. For 13 years, I designed products here in India, things like television sets, appliances, packaging, stuff like that. And then I went to the US to do graduate studies. That's where accidentally I met one of the pioneers in design research who was then working for Fitch, also teaching at the Ohio State University. And she had a PhD in anthropology with a minor in other way around, PhD in psychology with a minor in anthropology. And she was a Norwegian, Dr. Liz Sanders, and she brought the culture of participatory design from Norway to America. And for those of you who are not familiar with the idea of participatory design, it essentially emerged from the social and political context of Scandinavia, where they believed in the cooperative model of managing economy, politics, and industry, where you involve people in defining the structure and functioning and outputs of any system. So she came from that background and she introduced that her anthropological, sociological, and this conceptual participatory design thinking to design. So she was on my graduate committee. I began to learn concepts in anthropology, sociology, because after all, design's impact has to be understood, has to be measured, and has to be managed. And I began to travel around the world with her and then later on my own. Started my company almost 26 years ago called SonicRim. Before that, I worked with her for 5 years. So for last 30 years, I've been a researcher. I've been also a teacher. I've taught in Delhi at NIFT, National Institute of Fashion Technology, in Denmark at 180 Academy. It was a school started by a conglomerate of European corporations, and then at Carnegie Mellon University in the Silicon Valley. In all of these areas, I taught design methodology and research. Um, and through all these experiences of traveling, advising companies, I only was in a consulting role. I never worked for a major corporation, but they were all my clients like Google, Microsoft, Intel, Motorola, Samsung, Whirlpool, Johnson Controls. All of these companies were my clients, and my job was to use the idea of participatory design and co-creation, conduct research. They would come to us for research and inspire innovation. So that was a basic framework. So what I do today, by way of conversation, you keep at the back of my mind that the path you are on, that's the path I have walked. But the concepts I have learned from observing and understanding how everyday people live, how they make sense of the things they live with and the things they do. And it's very important for us because I have seen emergence of a new focus in what you call user research, and now they are calling it UXR, which is even further narrowed down, where we are only defining our interaction with the digital world more and more because that's where the jobs are, but the real world is outside of the digital world. When I teach research, or actually I taught user experience design at Carnegie Mellon to people who came from engineering background, people who have taught for built software products for 10, 15, 20 years and want to relearn design with a new perspective of technology, business, and design, and become product managers eventually in their careers. And I was teaching one thing to them, mindfulness. Because I've realized, and I firmly believe from my experience of last so many years, how many of you have read the book Design for the Real World by Victor Papanek? Several years ago, he said designers have a destructive power. They can kill people with design. I believe we need to remind ourselves again that with everything that we have in technology, we have a destructive power. If we are not mindful of the consequences of what we do, we are going to cause more harm than help to people. And I think that's the responsibility with which, at the end of my conversation, I want to leave you with that renewed sense of responsibility and mindfulness. That's what I taught at Carnegie Mellon. Um, and people come back and talk. So, this is my background. I'm going to now start my dialogue with one question. How many of you looked in the mirror before you came here to decide how you look, or what you're wearing, or what shoes you're wearing? How many of you did? All of you did. What were you thinking? What questions were you asking yourself? Or what questions were you asking the mirror? Anybody, please? What question was in your mind? What am I wearing is what? What is appropriate? Okay. O- Okay. Anybody else? What were you asking the mirror? Go ahead. Sorry? What do you mean by right? Why does it matter? Well, how does that matter? How does my hair look? And why does that matter? Okay, another question. Anybody else? One more person. Okay, somewhere in the back. Tell me, what question did you ask? Okay. Yeah.
Uh, do I do I look belong to this group?
Which group?
The group which I'm going to attend today. So this
And
is
what does it mean? What do you mean by you belong here?
so hope I don't stand out. I blend in the group at the same time hold out uniqueness.
So how did you know what the people were going to dress as?
I think a
No,
lot
no,
of
I'm
experience.
asking you a question. We are doing a research session, by the way.
Always wanted to be a respondent. Okay, so yeah, so you have a perception that this is what the group is and this is what they expect. So you can present yourself in a particular way to belong.
To belong, okay. I see people nodding here. They all want to belong. Okay, that's fair. Do I belong here? Do I look like I belong here? Probably yes, because I also stood in front of a mirror. Another question. How many of you, before you enter your home, leave your shoes outside before entering the home? Can somebody tell me why? Yeah, can you pass on the mic? Somebody's in the back. Yeah. Why do you do that?
Because there are germs outside and you don't want that to be carried inside the home. So hence you want to take out your slippers or whatever footwear outside and then enter home because
Okay. Anybody else? You can be loud. So, sorry, footwear hurts. Okay. They're dirty. Okay. Okay. Anybody else?
We were initially,
Sorry, that's what you're taught. So it's like a ritual is carrying forward. Okay, so another question I have. There are some people who don't care if you wear their shoes inside. Have you been into people's home where they don't care? Yeah. Okay, now this is a very interesting question. How do you feel entering a home, somebody else's home, by removing your shoes and entering it, and entering a home in which they really don't care if you remove the shoes? Is the feeling different of entering a home? What's the difference in entering these two homes? Discomfort when? You're removing the shoes or when you're not removing the shoes? Hmm. Okay. Okay. So this is very interesting. Some of the answers that I'm hearing are just the very fact that we have shoes. There are so many thoughts surrounding just wearing of the shoe or not wearing the shoes. And those thoughts are carried forward, as you said, for generations. Your parents, your grandparents, they probably imbibed some values in your head, some considerations in your head. In the same ways, when we talked about the mirror, we talked about, we are not just thinking about ourselves, but of do we belong to a certain projected image of where we are going. And what's funny is that each one of us wants to belong to a place that's different from the place you belong to. Right? When you sit at home, you're not wearing those clothes, you're not wearing those shoes, you're not ironing your clothes, you're not changing your hair the way you do for this occasion. Why do we change our appearance, each one of us, to belong to a collective image that none of us really belongs to? Any comments? Yes. We want to be different, but we don't want to be different. Okay. Too different. Okay. Now, yeah, go ahead.
We have that bit of a homogeneous belief that hey, we all are together, we grew up wearing uniforms, and we always believed in some community. So yeah, that's I think it's about being human.
So,
like
so,
a
the, so
community.
my next question is, to belong to a community, do we really have to surrender our identity? Or can we all be ourselves and still belong to a community? Has anybody experienced being yourself in a community?
With a community, but you want to differentiate yourself within the community. So for non-designers, probably we want to be seen as designers and get identified, so differentiate there itself. And within the community, we want to stand out and express, oh, I am within this community, but I'm a bit different. So it's shaping identities at both the levels, I think.
Now, how do you feel when you're sitting in your pajamas without any shoes, with your hair strewn over? What kind of thoughts or what kind of feelings are you getting? Are they any different from today when you have decked yourself to a new identity? Does it feel different?
It is the pursuit of social
No.
capital.
Yes. Who said that?
So it's the pursuit of social capital where if you don't belong to a community and you start belonging, you gain social capital, but then you have equal social capital to everybody. Therefore, within that community, you become more distinguished by appearance. So your social capital within that community then gets elevated.
Okay.
So it's like a hierarchy of communities in some way where you're trying to climb up a social ladder of sorts.
That's wonderful. So now, okay, go ahead. You had a comment.
Fit into a community, we try, and for me at least, I try and make the other comfortable. I'm also thinking about assimilating into a space without, so there's comfort of the other and myself.
Excellent. So now, I just want to say the reason for my having this conversation, and believe me, we are just going to keep talking today. I'm not giving a speech. This is a part of my process, and I'll tell you what that process is. There are two concepts I've learned by being a student of design for 50 years. The concept of ritual. You know, as designers, we are so imbibed or ingrained and grilled into focusing on form and function and features and tasks that we forget the idea of rituals. Something as simple as wearing or not wearing a shoe is a ritual we have learned over generations. And there are so many simple rituals of life that add context to the way you connect with people around you, the way you connect with your traditions, the way you connect with your past, the way you build your future. And I think one of the things I keep teaching my students at Carnegie Mellon, I don't teach there anymore, is think beyond task. Because every feature you build for fulfilling a certain task has ripple effects once it begins to be adopted and once it begins to become part of people's life. How many people know how Facebook started? Does anybody know? Mark Zuckerberg was a student at Harvard University and he built a feature to judge girls in the dorm based on who's hot and who is not. Yeah? Literally, that was how Facebook started. And it just caught on because a lot of guys liked it and they started using it and they started ranking all the girls in all the dorms and it grew up, it's become massive. Now, the person who has that as his seed of creativity that just caught on, what would you think about that person's sensitivity towards being responsible in an AI-dominated world? Do you expect this person to even imagine and be responsible for creating guardrails for AI? For guardrails, he and his team has never even imagined where Facebook will go. I don't even know if he or his team in the initial stages even cared where it will go. They didn't know where WhatsApp will go, what it will become when they build the WhatsApp. I think what we need to do is, as researchers, as designers, to bring that mindfulness of imagining the trajectory of what we build goes beyond the task that has been assigned to me. All these engineers who come to me in my class, They tell me the typical culture of a tech company. They have an engineering manager who's got an approval for a certain task to be built using their software, and they're just performing the task. They bring it alive, and there is a speed to market. They have to ship the product. You're judged based on how fast you ship, how many features you ship, and that's the hysteria. And of course, I again keep like bashing Mark Zuckerberg, but he's given a new philosophy to the tech world. Uh, Move fast, break things. Has anybody heard that? That's the philosophy with which Silicon Valley works. And which means there is no space for research there. Basically, you build it and bear the consequences. And if you break things, just fix them. That's the philosophy. But you have no idea of what you are breaking. Some of the things you break, you may never be able to mend them. So that's why I think the idea I'm trying to bring in here is that beyond the tasks you are performing as researchers, you have a much bigger responsibility to bring mindfulness about the consequences of what you build. And that's what I've been doing for the last 30 years as a researcher, is helping the entire organization become mindful when they build something and not just rely on a certain task that has been defined to create productivity or to create efficiency or to entice people into a certain experience. The whole idea of user experience, would you like to be defined as the user of the shoe, or you have a different identity outside of your shoe? And I think I have a like pedagogical problem with the word user itself. It objectifies you. It removes you from the participatory process of taking control of who you are, who you want to be, and who you want to belong to, what group you want to belong to. And therefore, I think this idea, I think we need to, a true researcher and a true designer is one who recognizes that every individual is unique. We don't have to have them conform to a collective identity. But at the same time, now I'm going to introduce a new idea. There is an idea of social imagination that we need to be conscious of, that is built by the books we read, the people we talk to, even at the street corner, the poetry that we have read, the movies that we have watched, the leaders that we have listened to, they could be political, religious, whatever they are, or your professional leaders. And through all of that, communities of people form and they develop collective imagination. And what actually, the design that is sustainable is the one that feeds into the collective social imagination that already exists. In sociology, social imagination is considered as the shared values, shared beliefs, shared aspirations that a group of people possess. And that is not created just by advertising and branding. That is created by how society interacts with each other. And true researcher is not the one who Googles with a question and finds an answers and designs with it. A true researcher is not the one who asks AI, so this is all the data, tell me what the answer is, and I'll design for that pattern. A true researcher is, how many, 5 minutes left? Okay. A true researcher is one who actually participates in social imagination, both as an observer and as a co-creator. I have a very strong concern when I look at younger generation of students I talk to. We rely so much on the digital space that in the community I live in here in Mumbai, younger people don't come down to play. Their world is digital world. They don't know their neighbors. We used to go down and play kanche, and we used to play lagori, and we used to play cricket and volleyball. None of that is play. All that is occupied by cars, and they are all on computers. They're asking questions to Google. They're asking AI to give them, write their essays or whatever. The true research is one where not only we as researchers go out and look at the real world, but we also get the people who are making decisions in the organization to go out in the real world and be mindful of how the world is, how their collective imagination of the future is, of the present is, and shape that. So I think these two ideas, that we need to build rituals of the future that draw upon the things that we have learned from generations. And in that process, I just want to add one more thing. Your language, your mother tongue is extremely important. One thing I've learned is that there is a linguist called Ganesh Devi. He's done research with Indian languages. There are 740 Indian languages from his research. And he says spoken language has radically altered human consciousness in the evolutionary process. And language is the one in which we interpret our lived environment. So people living close to ocean, people living in the mountain, their language is enriched by their interpretation of their environment. And that's one reason why people in Tamil Nadu, people in Andamans, when tsunami came, they actually had language and words with which they understood the behavior of the ocean. And the Adivasis went up to the mountain and survived. And that's the way in which you connect through your language to your environment. And that's a wisdom that we gain through 100 years, 1,000 years of living with that language, learning about the environment. So just only relying on the universal language, homogenized language, be it English or Hindi or whatever, is not enough as researchers. I believe we need to embrace the local language. Even if you are moved somewhere from another place, you have to get close to the local language, speak in local language, understand how people think and feel in local language. That's the only way in which you will understand the local context in which your ideas have to deliver value. I'll just say the two words that came up, interestingly, is the title of my book, which I'm just publishing next week. It's called Being and Belonging, a journey of curiosity and imagination. And I say research essentially is curiosity and design is imagination. So to actually, to end my conversation, I'll say something what my teacher at NID on the first day of our class on 25th June 1975 said to us. He said, his name is Professor Mohan Bhandari. He said, the foundation year of design, if you achieve two things, it will last you for a lifetime. Number one, learn to unlearn everything you've learned in the school. Learn to learn from the school of life. And number two, reclaim your childlike curiosity. And I think with these two messages, two competencies, knowing but being able to unlearn what you have learned through our schooling and keeping our freshness and curiosity alive, we can become much better researchers. So thank you very much. Was that okay? Edward Tufte, has anybody heard about Edward Tufte? He has strongly pleaded against PowerPoint. He says PowerPoint oversimplifies thinking. Life is much complex, information is complex, and it forces you to put everything in bullet points. Whereas ideas are more fluid than what PowerPoint allows you to share and talk and have conversations about. But there's one thing I want to show. This one. I think we are all working towards the future, and all my work of last 50 years has led me to believe the future we want to create is the one, this is, I call it a pathway to a convivial society. Is one where in everyday people, we cultivate imagination. That means even in organizations we serve. A future where caring and sharing are the foundational principles. Healing and regenerating are the steps through which we are taking people. Compassion and critical thinking should go together. So it's not just compassion, but also have the critical dialogue through which you move forward. And so this is my model for, Ivan Illich has written a book called Tools for Conviviality, where he talks about the future. And convivial future is one where we play with restraint, we enjoy with responsibility, and we recognize that our right to indulgence and consumption is limited by other people's right to their own consumption, and the joy of life also. So I think as long as we understand that, we will design things that are not just for consumption, but for conservation and sustenance. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your advocacy of mindfulness. It has truly restored the sense of responsibility in our minds. I now request Shipra to present a memento to our keynote speaker, Uday. Sir.
The people at the end, did you hear me?